The New York Times reports that Russia appears to be ramping up a more advanced online disinformation campaign ahead of the 2024 presidential election. Investigators say operatives with ties to the Kremlin have been creating distorted replicas of legitimate news sites in various democratic nations, including the United States. The goal is to bolster isolationist policies by influencing people to vote for candidates who do not support aid for Ukraine. The campaign is similar to a Russian troll farm effort in 2016 to influence Americans' opinions using fake social media posts. The Russian efforts are a part of what the World Economic Forum was talking about in its 2024 Global Risk Report, in which it listed misinformation and disinformation as the greatest risks to the world over the next 2 years. For countries like the United States holding elections this year, that risk is heightened even further. So how does a candidate run a fair and truthful campaign when misinformation exists around every corner, on every social media app, and even in the words of some of the people running these campaigns? A new book out called The Lie Detectives seeks to answer those questions. Sasha Issenberg is the author of that book and joins me now. Sasha, thanks for being here. You wrote that that the political mis and disinformation really changed or exploded in the 2016 race. What were some of the changes that brought that on?
Yeah, this was the first time that Americans really had to reckon with the power of lies to move virally over social media. What happened with the internet was it lowered the barriers to entry to political communication, and often in the early days that was a sort of happy story. We talked about the Obama campaign bringing in voters who were able to communicate and reach one another online. We talked about the Arab Spring being driven by social media posts, but it also meant that you now had foreign state actors like the Russian intelligence services you just mentioned, John, individuals who might not be accountable, they might be anonymous online. There might be people who are just trying to make money off of advertising clicks. And the challenge for the campaigns on the other side of that is this sort of asymmetric environment where their opposition isn't their opponent. It's not another campaign. It's not another party that you can hold accountable for lying. It's somebody who sort of exists outside of our political system.
And so who are the lie detectives and what are they doing? And are they always on the side of good, or are some of the people who are learning how to do this turning it around and using the same techniques to help their party?
Yeah, so after 2016, the American left, Democrats, really had a reckoning as they tried to confront this for the first time. And at that point, everything was on the table. There were people who focused on developing a monitoring and tracking infrastructure so that they could basically keep tabs on what was moving online to make smart decisions about how and when to respond. There were people who suggested that they fight fire with fire and create disinformation campaigns of their own. And I detail how in Alabama, in a special election in 2017, there were these two major false flag operations targeting the Republican Roy Moore. There are other people who've tried to sort of fight back against lies and conspiracy theories by adopting their language and aesthetics, trying to use sort of humor, memes, GIFs, the sort of language of the internet to be entertaining in the same way that often lies are more entertaining than the truth.
Well, and there's also this other big lie out there, of course, promoted by Donald Trump, that the 2020 election was stolen. Our polling shows that 67% of Republican voters believe that. In Ohio believe that, but they also more broadly believe it. How is the Biden administration combating that? Have they figured out how to deal with that piece of misinformation?
Yeah, I mean, the Biden campaign in 2020 sort of developed a mindset where they wanted to focus solely on what they called market-moving information. And that was the words of the digital director that year. The idea was, look, people are going to lie about you all day long if you're a public figure, you're a public institution. They're going to lie about the issues you care about. And the Biden campaign said, we are only really concerned with things that will move votes away from us. And so they tried to do a lot of pretty ambitious research to get to the bottom of the underlying concerns and see if they were things that the campaign could address. And so the Biden campaign is not concerned with sort of conspiracy theories or lies that circulate among Trump supporters if they are not actually persuadable. They're concerned about the ones that are going to make a jump to a larger audience and could potentially turn votes away from Biden.
So as a last question, Sasha, how bad do you think it's going to get in 24, having seen what you've seen and talked to the people you've talked to? And And if so, is there any voter hygiene you can suggest for people watching this campaign?
Yeah, I'd be less concerned about the idea that some individual bit of disinformation derails the presidential campaign or one of the high-profile statewide races that we know about now. The place where I think that there really could be damage and effect on election outcomes is down ballot. The races we're not talking about that are, somebody running for county commissioner or state representative or city council. Their campaigns don't know how to handle this. They don't know how to get somebody at Facebook to pay attention to their concerns. The companies are not prepared. They often don't even know the names of these candidates. I think the best advice I could give to an individual voter is there's probably nothing that you have to share in the next couple of minutes that couldn't wait a little while. And if something seems too good to be true and sort of flatters your biases, it's something delightfully negative about a public figure you hate or something unbelievably great about someone you like, do a simple fact check, do a Google for a fact check on it. And if you find a fact check that suggests that what you were seeing online is wrong, make sure you share the fact check. I think one of the problems is that bad information travels quickly, in part because it's exciting and entertaining, and the good information tends to stay put. And citizens should use their networks to push out good information the same way that some folks are using their networks to push out bad stuff.
Good advice for news organizations as well. Sasha Issenberg, the author of The Lie Detectives. Thanks a lot, Sasha.